Hi there, I'm Kimberley Adair-Gagnon. I'm going to continue on with showing the progression of our class meetings and how things are shifting and changing, and what I'm reflecting about along the way. I also have a couple of assignments that are new that I am excited to share. So, keeping with routine, we're sticking with our norms for virtual classroom norms. It's going okay, still needing some reminders for the kids, but this is all new and it's a new way of working. So, we're just continuing our work in this area. Our chat norms, these are the norms that the students created. So we reviewed these again. These do seem to be going well. Kids do seem to be really on board with it for the most part, because they were also involved in the creation of them, if you recall from one of the previous episodes. It may have been episode 7. I'm not sure. We're also continuing along with sticking with our responsive classroom routine of a greeting and share. The last few meetings, our share has been in the chat, but today I decided to do our share out loud. And so I had to explain how that was going to work and what kids needed to do. A few kids still shared in the chat because they weren't necessarily comfortable talking out loud through this format, or some of them didn't have their mic enabled and they were noticing that was an issue when they were on their phones. And a lot of my students do join through the app on their phones rather than a laptop. So pandemic journal is what we focused on for our share. And so I had the kids watch my samples, my exemplars of my own personal pandemic journal, and then they had to share whether they approached their journal similarly or differently and compare and contrast. One thing that was really important for me here was to really keep it open that however they're approaching their journal is fine. Mine's an example, and I'm excited to see how they're approaching it. And they're all approaching in different ways. And so this was exciting to hear and see what they're doing with their own journals. Our activity for this meeting, we are working on some collaborative math projects with our 2 other grade 7-8 classrooms, and the students are in mixed groupings. And we began this project before the class suspension came about, probably about 2 weeks before, maybe even a little bit more than that. We're asking that the students continue with this project even now. And so one student from another class had a survey for that project that she was hoping all grade 7/8s would complete. And so I used that as our activity. The survey was done through Microsoft Forms, and then I just posted it in the chat and the kids did it on the spot. And it was really effective and handy, and it's making me think about how can I maximize the use of Microsoft Forms through our virtual meetings, and what kinds of things would be important for me to bring forward for them. So this is the math project that we've been working on. And so the idea behind it initially was that students would use math skills and learning in order to budget for and plan out a farewell for the end of the year, a farewell celebration. However, it's not looking like we're going to be able to do a celebration at the end of June. It's quite unlikely. So we are asking the kids to continue with the math, and then hopefully we can do something at a later date. And so one of the biggest things is being able to get in touch with group members. And so I had a couple kids that did say, I'm having trouble getting in touch with so-and-so. And so I've been collaborating with the other teachers so that we can connect kids. And we're telling them that Teams is a really good place for them to do their work together. Next is a Lego math assignment. So every week I'm going to be giving the students one math assignment in addition to the expectation that they spend 30 minutes or so per day on Mathletics, which is a program that we've been using all year. And I'm just bumping up the time of the expectation for Mathletics because that's a good way for me to tell, number one, are they working on math, because I get all the data. Number two, what concepts are they mastering through mathletics, and where do I need to focus my attention for them, especially in our one-to-ones when we're setting goals. And so I like that mathletics tracks all of that for me, especially when I'm not there with the kids all the time. So this is an example of this week's Lego math. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is the assignment. I always like to explain the learning target at the beginning. And so this explains the learning target and what we're trying to learn. And the reason I came up with this project is because my daughter's been doing a lot of Lego lately. She's 6 years old, and she built this boat that she was very excited about. And so she has also been asking to help me with some of my teaching videos that I've been making for my students. And so I thought this was a good way to involve her and, kind of bring her learning together with the work that I'm doing to prepare for my students, because as we know, as parents working from home, it's sort of a tricky thing that we're doing right now. So this was a nice way to have her help me out, and she's doing some of her own learning at the same time. And so we created a video where she explains all the cool features of her boat, and I don't know, there's a spy camera and, a special window, and she goes into some details about that part of it. And then she counts all the colors in this boat. And then we record, her and I, on a whiteboard, all of these numbers and create a table similar to this. And so the kids get to watch that video if they choose, if they want to. But then their job is to take this data and represent it with fractions, decimals, percentages. And so this gives me some information about what do they know and understand about the relationships between fractions, decimals, percentages, and whether they can take this data and use it to do that. I added this little note down here. Normally, I would probably write something like this on the whiteboard for the kids. I would also talk about it several times with them if we were doing an assignment similar to this in the classroom. But I wrote it right on here for them in this way. Maybe I'll do it differently next time. I'm not sure. I'm questioning whether or not it's big enough, if they were able to see it well enough, or if I should have had it somewhere at the top with these learning goals. So we learn as we go. I'll change things up possibly next time. Lowest common denominator, and then they had to make a graph to represent the data. They could use a photo of the graph. They could insert the table. If they know how to make the graph using Microsoft Word, that would be okay too. The last part of the assignment is an extension, an optional activity. And so this extension is for them to do if they choose. And it just takes it that one step further. I'm hoping lots of students choose to do this. The other thing I added were these helpful videos for kids to watch if they get stuck. And there's a video for everything they might need to do for this project. It's available to them. The next thing we discussed was pandemic journal Flipgrid. So I created a Flipgrid for pandemic journals, and then there'll be a topic each week for them to record a video about what they have written about. My goal here is to give them a little bit of accountability to do their journals, because I'm not asking them to hand in every single journal entry that they do. I'm asking them to hand in one or two of their best journal entries. And in our one-to-ones that I did throughout the week, we set personalized goals as to how many journal entries would make sense for them throughout the week. Because now that our school suspension is indefinite, I want them to continue with this because I think it's very important, the documentation, but I don't necessarily expect them to do a journal entry every single day now moving forward, because there are going to be other pieces of learning that we're going to have to continue with. When this assignment initially went out, it was anticipated that we would be out of class for 2 weeks, but now, of course, that has changed. The next thing I asked them to do was to, at some point this week, download the Microsoft Whiteboard app. because I want them to use, I'm hoping to include Microsoft Whiteboard in our class meetings as a collaboration space. And so I wanted to test it out in Friday's meeting. And so I'm hoping they would all have that app ready and available. Teacher Q&A, another routine thing that if you've been watching my videos, you've seen this slide several times now. What am I noticing about teacher Q&A time? I'm noticing that the questions are a little bit more content focused rather than procedural. So as things are becoming more routine, as we're getting into the swing of things, kids are, I think, focusing a little bit more on the learning, and they're asking questions about that rather than, how to, where do I find this, that sort of thing. Those routine and procedural type questions are becoming less. Looking ahead, so students already had an email with what they need to be thinking about for the week ahead. And so this slide was just a quick review. We'd already gone over lots of Q&A, so this was a brush over slide. It was very quick. There weren't a lot of questions that came up here. We're still continuing to end with positivity, and so we did another mindfulness activity in this meeting. Again, it was successful. There was lots of positive comments from the kids, and I used this book again, which I really like, and we did I did sort of a blend of two different activities in this meeting, Mind Body Connection and Thank a Farmer, and so those were the two that I used. So big takeaways from this week: routines continue to be important, and they're really showing that they're effective because students are getting into the questions about the learning now, and I'm getting less of those procedural how to, where do I find, etc. questions. And so I think that's important to note because we're going to be able to go farther now. So taking that time to build in those routines, I think the evidence is showing for me personally that that's effective. We'll continue with routines for math and ELA, and we're lessening the pandemic journal so that I can start bringing forward other types of English language arts learning. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you find it helpful, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.